And then in terms of your writing, tell me kind of what you noticed when you started really getting serious about mindfulness. How did that impact your writing abilities?
Oh, so many ways. I actually have just finished putting together, I'm calling it the 6 week Mindful Writer Challenge. I just finished the first round with my first 10 students, and it's basically a 6 week course where I teach all the things that mindfulness taught me about writing and how to be a better writer. Because when I look back on my writing career, it was around 2016 that I started to get some traction and some successes, some publications. I found an agent, sold my first book. Um, and at first I was like, well, meditation didn't do that. I was very skeptical, but when I really picked apart the things that I realized I got better at as a writer, they were related to mindfulness and my meditation practice. So things like quieting the inner critic so that you can get that first draft on the page. And then diving into, say, mindfulness of emotion meditation so that you can be comfortable with an uncomfortable emotion long enough to get it on the page with the right words to describe it. I mean, that's an uncomfortable thing to do, and you have to be able to sit with anger, sit with heartache. Otherwise, your story is going to be very surface level. It's not going to have a lot of heart to it. And then when you get to the end of your first draft and you have to go back and start editing, then you want your inner critic. Then you have to like embrace that inner critic and be let's really tear this thing apart and see where it's not working and really see what's on the page versus what I imagined when I was writing it. I mean, all of these are things that I learned through meditation that have directly affected my writing.
So in terms of kind of silencing that inner critic, tell me about kind of the process there, because I'm very
Yeah.
familiar with that as a writer myself. Like there's definitely, you know, unless I have a couple of drinks or maybe smoke a little bit of weed,
Yeah,
that really helps me just kind of get all of my thoughts out onto the page. Whereas
absolutely.
writing sober, I've found it's that like I'm trying to perfect every little sentence, and then an
Yeah,
hour's gone by and I have one page. So
right.
that inner critic is like so strong. So tell me how exactly does mindfulness help you sort of manage that? Because I'm assuming it
Yeah.
doesn't take the inner critic away.
No,
It
never. No, I wish you could. But then also, I don't wish because you do need that inner critic when you set to editing. It's very useful. So you don't want to get rid of it. You just have to teach it to sit in the corner when you don't need it. And there's that old quote people like to throw out of Hemingway saying, like, oh, I write drunk and I edit sober. And for some people, it works. It worked for Hemingway. My challenge with that is that if I'm writing drunk and then I'm like, okay, now I want to switch to edit mode, like, forget it. My mind is gone. Like there is no edit mode when you've smoked a little bit or drunk some wine. um so mindfulness can play the same role of getting the inner critic to sit down. The way I usually do it with my students is we'll do a very short mindfulness of thought meditation where you use an anchor. Often it's the breath, but it can also just be the sounds in the room, whatever anchor works for you, and you rest your attention on the anchor and you just notice when your mind wanders, right? So you're focusing on your breath and then you're like, oh, I'm planning dinner. Just noticing that, and then come back to the breath and like, oh, now I'm remembering that time that so and so. Okay, back to the anchor. Just becoming aware of where your mind goes. That's the exercise. That's the whole thing. And then we end the meditation and we go immediately into our writing. And what I tell my students is to treat the writing like it's your meditation. So as you're writing, you hear the little voice say like, well, that sucked. You better erase that. Okay, now I'm just going to keep writing and keep going. Like, duly noted, I'm just going to keep writing. And then that as soon as you write the next sentence, that little voice pipes in again of like, um, God, why do you even bother? This is the worst. This is the worst sentence anyone has ever written. Delete that. Delete that right now before anyone sees it. Okay, thank you for your opinion. I'm just going to keep writing. And the more you practice that, the better you get at just noticing the thought and just letting it be a thought and come back to the writing and just keep writing. And when you can do that, what you end up with is a crappy first draft, which is exactly what you want. First drafts will be crappy. And I think you really have to embrace that. And, I forget, there was some other writer who uses I don't know what your audience is, but she calls it her shitty first draft. And that is kind of become an industry term, the shitty first draft. You can bleep me. And then you go back and you edit. And I think the best advice I ever got as a writer is that you can't edit a blank page. Just get it on the page. And then you can turn a pile of poo into a masterpiece, but you can't edit a blank page. So quieting that inner critic long enough to get the words down and say, okay, I know it's crappy. I'm just going to keep writing. And then lo and behold, you've got a first draft. Then you can go back and be hard with yourself. Oh God, that sentence really was bad. Let's fix that. Oh, that's not really what I meant. I meant to say it more like this. And then, it starts to get better and better and better. And then you end up with something you're proud of and you can put out in the world.
Wasting my time.
You just can't help yourself, can you?